He also has 2 Perforos, God of the Forge, in the main deck, and that's a card that, if he sticks on the table, is very dangerous for blue-white control.
He does have some powerful cards, but I believe the total sum of his deck is not well situated for this matchup.
Right, he's got to hope that he gets one of those going. We're underway. Both players on a mull to 6 here. I'm starting on a tap land. Chihoi with a Guildgate, a Temple for Cruse. You do see in Chihoi's hand a fair amount of lands, at least 1 Syncopate. Just going to try to sit back and counter anything that would beat him.
And it's not evident to me right now if William has green mana. It looks like he's on 2 copies of Temple of Triumph. Scry's at the bottom here, digging for green mana.
Yeah. Of note, Chihoi's on Detention Sphere blue-white, not Planar Cleansing blue-white, which I think generally tends to be a little bit, well, can be weaker in these kind of matchups. Against the carry-to decks, I usually think the cleansing builds are better. But because he's not playing Abrupt Decay colors, it's probably a wash as to which way you want to go.
I agree with you. I would imagine they're of roughly equal quality here.
And we do see Cruse does draw that untapped green source here on turn 3, so he's going to get to play. We'll see what he wants to go with. It looks like he can play Voice of Resurgence with that extra mana up. He's going to go with Sylvan Caryatid first, though.
Yeah, has Advent in hand and another double green spell in Courser Crufix, so this might be about as much of mana fixing as it is mana acceleration.
And Chihoi, 4th turn, makes a 4th land. He has lands 5 and 6 already in his hand. Not sure what control cards he actually has, but if we're just playing land go, that certainly favors him.
The Sphinx's Revelation 2 Aetherling deck?
Yeah.
Probably pretty happy with the pace of the game thus far.
Yeah, the only card his opponent's played in the first 3 turns is a 0-3. That's got to be great for control. Cruse just passing the turn. Somewhat of a telegraph here of Advent to the Worm, I would think. And he's going to go ahead and make Advent on the end step. Chihoi just lets it resolve, suggesting, I would think, an Azorius Charm here.
Yeah.
Worm token into play. The draw for Cruse was an Elvish Mystic. If he's worried about Azorius Charm, he may want to pre-combat this Voice of Resurgence. I'm sorry, he drew a Temple this turn.
Yeah, leading off here with the Voice, he was pretty safe.
Yeah. Unfortunately, because he doesn't have an untapped land, he could still get syncopated for 2 here. We'll have to be syncopated for 3. So if Chihoi can't syncopate this and Azorius Charm, he'd have to do one or the other. If Chihoi has a Dissolve and is willing to spend a Dissolve on Voice, then he could do both.
But William's pretty, I'm sure he would like this Voice to resolve, but if it trades with a Syncopate and he gets a clean shot with the Worm here, I think William will take it.
And you see Chihoi with Syncopate and Azorius Charm in his hand. It's going to have to choose between, I was going to say choose between which one he wants to do, but it seems like he's almost locked into this Syncopate. The Azorius Charm on Worm token play isn't very appealing.
He does have Elspeth in hand, so there is an argument that he could just kind of let this resolve also. But I think he'd rather keep the board as clean as possible.
He will Syncopate for 3, so that exiles the Voice, and Cruse crashes in for 5. EM is down to 15. And a Scry post-combat, building up toward more threats, you said. Here we do see another Advent of the Worm in his hand, a Courser of Crufix, an Elvish Mystic. And I believe Domri Rod is the last card. So at least of those, I'd say Domri and the Worm are probably the biggest prizes that he has here.
See now if Chihoi can sweep any of this up.
Yeah, Cruse just goes ahead and plays into a potential Supreme Verdict, makes Elvish Mystic. I kind of like that here as well.
Not a lot to be done about it, you know. Adding the Elvish Mystic to the table, it's not like you're giving up that much appreciably in the event that there's a Supreme Verdict here. Just
exactly.
You can't take it with you. You just got to cast it. Maybe it doesn't do very much, but
I mean, so what? If Yim sweeps the board this turn, then you're potentially playing a turn 7 Elvish Mystic.
Right.
Like what is that? Is that even a card?
It's probably not a card.
Yeah. Swing by the Worm. The Worm will get Azorius Charmed by Yim. And post-combat, Cruse is going to try for Domri. I imagine he suspects no Dissolve out of Yim. Dissolve's the only counterspell that would get this. He has enough mana to pay for Syncopate. last turn. I would think if Yim had a dissolve, he would have done it last turn to the voice.
Yeah.
So Cruse successfully navigating here. And then post-combat plays Courser. And now he's going to have some card advantage.
It's got the combo going. Unfortunately, this is not in and of itself enough to overpower blue-white control because Revelation, Big Sweepers, Elspeth, that's all easily able to overpower this stuff.
Yeah, Yim can let Cruse get extra cards off Domri. It's late enough in the game that that's not really going to beat him. A Domri emblem could be problematic for Yim, so he's going to have to find an answer by the time Domri's at 7. But if Cruse draws 3 more cards with that Domri, that's probably okay for Yim. You see his play this turn was Elspeth Sun's Champion. So he may just kill the Domri that way with a horde of 1/1s.
Well, the other option that he has is he has a Mizium Mortars in his hand, so we could try to set up one turn where he can overload Mizium Mortars and attack with enough power to take out Elspeth.
And right now he would have he only has 3 power, so he can't do it yet, but you're absolutely right. You can start by swinging at Elspeth with Courser. That'll take out a soldier. We're going to see where he goes here. He plays another Courser of Crufix. And no interest in Centaur Healer. He's going to, even though he could draw it with Domri, he's going to go ahead and scry it to the bottom. Or no, he can't. Sorry, he already used Domri this turn to draw, so Sign of Vitu-Ghazi waits for him on top of the deck.
So it may look like William is making, he's not making an effort to play around Detention Sphere or Supreme Verdict, and maybe asking why that's happening, but he doesn't really have a choice. The resources in his hand don't allow him to play around those cards right now, so he just has to cast his stuff.
Yeah, and Yim's hand has actually been pretty underwhelming this game. He's cast, as you see in his graveyard, a Syncopate and an Azorius Charm, but other than that Elspeth, he has only had lands, and his hand has 2 more lands.
Yep.
So despite multiple scries off these 2 temples, he's really not finding much action. Domri goes and go up to 6 here and draw Centaur Healer. Cruse can just burn through his deck. Draws the creature with Domri, can play the lands with Courser.
And William does not know this, but the coast is clear. I mean, he can overload Mizium Mortars and knock Elspeth down to 1. He still may want to wait at least 1 more turn.
I think he needs it to be 0, right? One is not enough.
If he has a 4th creature, then it might be enough, like the following turn.
He's going to shock here, and he's going to go ahead and overload the Mizium Mortars. I mean, if he doesn't have any more power to put onto the battlefield, then might as well be now, right?
Yeah.
Tokens are gone. And he's going to swing Elspeth down to 1. While this doesn't kill Elspeth, what it actually does is it opens the window for him to play Sign of Vitu-Ghazi, and Elspeth won't be able to kill it because she won't have 3 loyalty.
Yeah. Also, I think William's probably on the course right now where he just wants to plus Domri up to 7, as you mentioned, but he can also fight next turn one of the tokens with a Courser, and then attack and finish off
Elspeth. Yeah.
Well, I guess he can still block with 2 tokens on the 2 Coursers, so that's not a guarantee either.
There is a hitch in the plan right now, however. Yim has finally did his 4th spell of the game, and that's going to be, it is a Supreme Verdict. And he'll just fire that one off right away. Wants to keep his Planeswalker rolling. Pretty good card with which to do that. The draw is Elvish Mystic from Cruse. If he makes Scion, he should have enough blockers to help his Domri get up to 7. And now, remember, a Domri Emblem, and he's in business to, but even a Domri Emblem is not winning yet.
No.
It's close, but it's not totally winning. That is one of the things where not playing Elixir can come back to get you. A lot of times to beat a Domri Emblem, you have to really overpower it with Sphinx's Revelations. And while it's possible to do out of a straight blue-white control build, it is harder to do when you can't loop your deck.
So this is a spot where we're kind of far away from even worrying about that to begin with.
Yeah.
You need to have a Revelation and then probably chain into another Revelation for that to even be...
Right, it looks like a Domri Emblem might happen here, though.
Yeah.
Domri did tick up to 7. So in the situation where Cruse makes a Domri Emblem, what I'm saying is that it's going to be tough for Yim to navigate that. You know, he's going to need very specific cards. But we'll see. Right now, Sign of Vitu-Ghazi makes 2 birds. And Sylvan Caryatid is the other play for the turn. Gets some insurance protection for that Domri. And the draw for Yim is Sphinx's Revelation. It's his 5th. He's gonna have a lot of lands to go with that. Yim has not missed a land drop yet.
Yeah, it's gonna be a huge one.
Will it be big enough to compete with the Domri emblem is the question. All the creatures swing. They get blocked by Caryatid, Scion, and a bird. Yim makes 3 more. Plays his land, and now has 10 mana open. This will be a Revelation for 7, but it's gonna have to do a lot of work. Remember, that Domri emblem is not messing around.
So do you think there's an argument in that spot to rev for 4 and hope to find a detention sphere?
Absolutely. There's an argument to be doing it. Were I in this situation, I'm very used to playing Elixir builds. I think I would play it the same way Yim is. I have faith that a Revelation for 7, and then I can untap and win through a Domri emblem. For example, if that Rev for 7 hits a Supreme Verdict, well, okay then, right?
Yeah,
the
sure.
7 life mitigates whatever damage you took off this attack. You have a Verdict for the creature. A lot of your cards do become pretty dead, though. Azorius Charm stops being much of a card. You use it to lifelink Aetherlings at this point, or to cycle. With the Domri emblem, Yim's going to be taking damage almost every turn now.
But I think, as you mentioned, the fact that, you know, if you find a Supreme Verdict, you're probably fine, is enough of a reason that you don't have to get too risky.
Remember, the abilities of a Domri emblem is all of Cruse's creatures now have haste, trample, double strike, and hexproof. So a pretty nasty quartet there. Basically means that Yim can't target any of them, so all his target kill spells no longer work. And they all come into play tapped and attacking. And deal way more damage than you'd expect them to deal.
I wonder if William even needs to really send any attackers at Elspeth here.
Well, he would like to. I think he wants to kill Elspeth. So the bad situation for him is if Yims has a Supreme Verdict. And if Yim can Verdict and then untap with Elspeth, I think Yim will win much more easily than if he loses the Elspeth before he gets the Verdict. And when you consider the fact that when you look at, so Cruse has 9 power on the board, because they have double strike, that's 18 damage. Stopping along the way to kill Elspeth isn't costing you very many turns. So Cruse is gonna swing. We'll see where they went. Yim draws 7. And an update for you with a win in round 14. Tom Ross stays at X2, moves to 12-2, and I would assume is the first player in our top 8 here in New Jersey.
Congratulations to him. Truly incredible the run he's had in the Invitationals this year.
Really showcasing the power of one-drops, one-drop creatures.
Yep. Fire Drinker Satyrs, you know, Glistener Elves, whatever.
Yeah.
It's all fine.
And it looks like Cruse did not kill the Elspeth, so that's going to be very good for Chihoy Yim. Usually he did draw the Supreme Verdict. He got one off the Revelation and drew another. And now Verdict happens. And that, I think it's going to come back to be pretty important that Yim got to keep this Elspeth.
Well, William may have been viewing it from a perspective of, I can't beat a Supreme Verdict anyway.
Okay, I just have to fade Supreme Verdict.
Yeah.
So the hard part from Cruse's standpoint is that you don't just have to fade the 3 remaining Supreme Verdicts. You also have to dodge the 3 remaining Sphinx's Revelations.
Yeah.
And at that point, when Yim's drawing 7 cards, well, 8 when you include his draw step, and you have to have him dodge 6 outs, like, your odds are pretty low at this point.
Well, the other side of it is, you know, Chihoy was doing nothing for several turns there, wasn't countering relevant things, wasn't taxing the Domri, wasn't revelating. It was pretty safe to assume that his hand was just lands. If he had drawn Supreme Verdict, he likely would have cast it. And so then you're in a spot of, did he draw a Supreme Verdict exactly this, or Sphinx's Revelation rather, exactly this turn?
If Yim doesn't draw Sphinx's Revelation, it probably doesn't matter where Cruse sends the creatures. He's probably winning in all scenarios. Right? Like,
probably.
Yeah, I mean, when they get a Domri emblem play, you have to start casting Revelations almost immediately or you're dead.
Yeah.
Like, this just does so much damage. We see here Xenagos the Reveler. That was the play for Cruse. See how many... It looks like it's going to resolve, so like that Yim did not hit a counter spell off that Revelation. That's going to be pretty important. Each of these... Xenagos is very scary with the Domri emblem. Each of these are 2/2 haste double strikers. And Cruse is going to have to hold back with the Satyr token. He does not want to lose the Xenagos.
You are right, though. The Domri emblem does give William some play, even though, you know, under normal circumstances, GOI would have this game very easily stabilized.
Yeah. And Aetherling is the play for Yim. It's unlikely that Cruse can win through this. Elspeth's doing one heck of a job here.
Yeah, now the Planeswalkers are no good. Aetherling can get rid of those very easily.
Right.
And Aetherling's also a pretty effective blocker.
Aetherling's a good blocker.
Even against a Domri album, it's still a fine blocker.
It can't blink out because then he still takes the damage, but it can turn itself into, you know, a 1/8.
Yeah, you just zero it down.
Yeah.
Toughness, pump the toughness all the way up, and then...
Usually you see it pump the other way, but it can go both ways. So you can make it one heck of a blocker when you want it to. Aetherling will become unblockable, take out Xenagos. And this game should be... It looks like it's now been locked up by Yim. He does have a Dissolve in hand. He has an Aetherling in play and Elspeth going.
And 2 turns away from going ultimate with Elspeth as well, so...
Right, so 2 Dissolves locks out William's next 2 draws.
Yeah.
I know Yim has 1, if not 2 Dissolves. And if he only has 1 Dissolve, it seems pretty likely that he can just find another off the Jace and the Scry from the first Dissolve.
And this is the problem that I was alluding to in the matchup for a deck like Naya Tokens. You just don't have a lot of raw power in terms of how much damage are your creatures dealing over the course of the game. So even though William did some powerful things in the abstract, it wasn't really that quick. And once GUI found a revelation, that undid all of the little pieces of incremental value that William was generating along the way.
I mean, this is one of the great parts about Sphinx's Revelation as a card, is that Yim can have a game where he just draws 10 lands to start the game and is still live to win. And Yim takes game 1 from William Cruse.
Not that big of a surprise after that revelation in spite of the Domri emblem.
Yeah. All right, so let's go ahead looking at the sideboard. I'm going to start on Yim's side. So a lot of the cards in the tokens deck can actually be pretty difficult for him to deal with. So he gets to tailor a lot of his answers post-board. I imagine you'll see some of these negates that he has in the board committee. He has 3 negates. In addition to that, he has a Fated Retribution, which seems pretty decent. It's instant speed, so it takes care of a lot of things like end-step advents and takes care of these Planeswalkers. Outside of that, I'm not sure we'll see too many of these cards come in the matchup.
Yeah, he's got some Dispel, some Fiendslayer Paladins, a Jace's Ingenuity, and a Jace Memory Adept. None of them seem very well suited for these sort of games, but I do like the negates. Gives him a solid way of containing the Planeswalkers, and the Last Breath seem pretty good against a Voice of Resurgence-based deck, one with Elvish Mystic as well. And the one Fated Retribution, I think, could be very powerful in these games.
Yeah, over on Cruze's side, he is on one of the game plans you'd expect out of a green deck. He starts with 3 Mistcutter Hydras in the matchup.
Yeah, he needs something that, you know, can punch through cards like Azorius Charm and the counter spells. His deck's a lot of 4 and 5 mana stuff, so things like Azorius Charm and Dissolve are really problematic for him. Mistcutter Hydra can do a lot of work here. Besides that, you're seeing Nyx Fleece Ram, a Banishing Light, a Glare of Heresy, a couple copies of Aegis of the Gods, Unflinching Courage, Busy Mortar's Deicide. I think the Glare of Heresy and the Banishing Light are okay cards to bring in here to fight Elspeth and some other Planeswalkers. If GUI may have sided in more creatures, you know, maybe he went to some sort of Archangel Thune plan, you can bring in those cards there as well. I think you can only be you can only afford to be so reactive against the blue-white control deck. You need to be aggressive. But a couple copies of those sort of cards I think are fine to bring in.
Well, one thing is Cruse actually doesn't know, based on game 1, whether or not Yim is playing Spheres or Planar Cleansings. So because of that, he may not bring in something like Glare of Heresy just yet. I think when your opponent's playing Detention Spheres, it's a very reasonable card to board in. But when you're thinking that all it's going to nab is an Elspeth, then it becomes, you know, it loses a lot of its value.
Well, you do, I mean, there's a lot of things, frankly, that William can easily cut from this deck.
Okay, so it's better than, say, Mizium Mortars.
2 copies of Mizium Mortars. I think 2 copies of Centaur Healer. I think between Elvish Mystic and Sylvan Caryatid, some of that stuff can go. So I think there's enough easy cuts here that even though you are correct, you're not 100% if GUI has any Glare of Heresy targets or any Banishing Light targets. I think I would rather take the risk than play with some of those cards.
Yeah, a lot of these. Yeah, and you're right. A lot of the cards in the main deck really are just not for this matchup.
Right. This deck seems really good at taking out creature decks, though, and probably against Black Devotion as well. Just have a lot of power, but
yeah, it has a diversity of threats that's pretty good. I think even in this matchup, that's one of the things that from the revelation side of matchups is why people move to things like planar cleansing, was that these caryatid, 3-color caryatid decks started getting better control matchups by playing lots of different types of permanents. You know, right here, for example, you see Voice of Resurgence, he needs to be exiled. You see Gods, like Perforos, okay, well, he needs to be countered, more or less. I guess you can deicide him post-board, but otherwise you have to get a counter or sphere him. You have Scion of Vitu-Ghazi, he needs to be Supreme Verdicted. Then you have Planeswalkers, well, those need to be Pithing Needled or countered or sphered, and you're just forcing the control player to have the right type of answer at every point in the curve. And the thing about all these cards is if at any point Shiho Yim misses having the right type of removal, say, you know, Yim has a Last Breath or something when Cruse goes to make a Perforos, well, he could very well die to the one card he doesn't answer.
You can die so fast. You don't have time to, all right, well, I can't answer this right now, but as long as I draw something in 4 or 5 turns, I'll be fine. It's not like that. Those cards that you mentioned kill so quickly that
exactly.
You may be better served just trying to play a game where you clean up everything rather than have the right bullets all on the curve for the different types of cards these decks are playing.
Right, and you get into this dangerous spot a lot of times in these matchups where if you didn't have the counter spell for the first threat, while you were busy and like sphering the first card you needed a detention sphere, they would play another, and then you'd never have chances to leave up your counter spells. So suddenly you just end up in these on the back foot, and it's really hard to get off of it without something like planar cleansing.
Yeah, the anti-synergy between counter spells and detention spheres is a real thing. You see it in games.
Absolutely.
I mean, the monsters versus blue-white matchup all the time. You saw play a Domri, all right, tap out a detention sphere rip, all right, follow up with a Xenagos. All right, the last answer in my hand's a counter spell. The Xenagos got into play, and now I'm way behind.
So why turn 2 Domri on the play is so difficult for blue-white control, is even when they have the answer to it, then they're tapping out and just giving you they're giving you free reign to resolve something else.
Yeah.
All right, with that said, game 2 is underway. Both players just trading lands for the first few turns. First play of the game is going to be William Cruse. He has Courser of Krufix on turn 3. This time he does also have his mana set up.
Yeah. He won't be stumbling in that regard. And Mutavault on the top, 2 copies of that. A lot of Ravnica Duels and Scrylands here to help William afford to play a couple of Mutavaults, even though he's playing 3 colors.
Yim with a pair of Revelations in hand on end step there, cycles Azorius Charm. Does not have a Last Breath as of yet for the Courser. Instead, he's going to have to Detention Sphere it. We pass back to William. And that's it. I think it's kind of a victory on Cruse's side, getting Yim to Detention Sphere a Courser.
For sure, and William has a Glare of Heresy in hand. He has one of his sideboarded cards, so the fact that that's also online here is great news.
See Glare, Advent of the Worm, and Xenagos all available to him. And this is where these decks can overload your removal. You know, ideally Yim would have had the Detention Sphere for Xenagos, because that's the best answer for Xenagos. But because he didn't have the Last Breath for the Courser, then he's using spheres where he doesn't want to use them. You see he does have a second sphere here for Xenagos, but he's having to tap out every turn, and now this is the dilemma of spheres and counter spells.
Yeah, the shields are down, and the fact that he's tapping out is even worse because William has a Mutavault this game. So every time the shields are down, that's 2 damage if William wants it.
It's possible we could see a game where Yim is tapping out every turn to kill something. I mean, right now, say William glares the sphere, makes a Satyr, swings Mutavault, so Yim's tapping out every turn for spheres, yet he's taking 6 and down to 12. You know, he's really far behind, despite basically executing his game plan.
And if, you know, William glares here, let's say, and then attacks for 6, as you mentioned, well, even if William follows up, Shioi rather follows up with, say, Supreme Verdict, that's still not...
It's a Planeswalker,
yeah,
it doesn't matter.
All the threat answer dynamic you were mentioning in the sideboard, that comes up all of a sudden.
Yeah. It's why you want to get in those situations where you're like, well, fine, I'll planar cleansing everything. Good, it just gets everything. But even sometimes, like, that doesn't even get Perforos, to be totally honest. We see an activation of Mutavault, and the glare does come on the sphere to release Xenagos. Xenagos back in play. Looks like he's gonna, we'll see if he makes a Satyr with it or makes mana. Yeah. I think he's gonna make mana here. Yeah, he activates Mutavault, plays Elvish Mystic, makes mana, makes Domri. Right, so like this is just such a nightmare scenario for Yim because the only things to answer those are Pithing Needles, which he doesn't have, and Detention Spheres, which he really just can't cast fast enough.
And he just drew a negate this turn.
Right.
And that ship has sailed.
Like even if he has Detention Spheres for all of these permanents, I'm not positive he can cast them before he dies.
And he's already gone through 2.
Right, so say he just had, you know, as many, like an infinite stream of them just in his hand. Like, they cost 3, right? You can only play them so quickly. And Cruse drawing additional cards here. Domri draws him a Courser. Xenagos makes another 2/2. And a real tough spot for Yim. So it goes down to 10.
Now, Chihoi is on the 4 Quicken and 4 copies of Supreme Verdict build of the deck. So we can try to get to this game in a state where he takes some blums, says, all right, end of your turn, Quicken, Supreme Verdict, untap, play something like Elspeth and try to get out in front of the game that way.
Right, so that's something that Elspeth does that really none of the other cards in blue-white do. So when you can't answer all your opponent's threats, you can blank them. You can play something more powerful. Elspeth does do that sometimes. It's really the only card that serves that purpose.
Yeah.
You know, maybe sure you're making 2/2s. I don't care, Elspeth. And we'll see. It looks like he has it again. It's that one of Elspeth. And we'll see if that's enough. That is the card he wants right now. And Advent of the Worm on the end step for Cruse. Things are going to be tough here. He would like to get Elspeth off the board. I think if you're on the Naya token side, you would suspect here that Cruse might play, or sorry, you'd suspect that Yim would just chump away on all your creatures and then cast Supreme Verdict plus Elspeth, say go.
Yeah.
And if that happens, it's possible that you've lost your edge on the board.
In spite of all the awesome things that William has been doing basically since turn 3 and beyond.
Elspeth's very powerful. Yeah, she can take care of multiple planeswalkers at the same time.
Poor Xenagos, you know, has been in play for so many turns, and
well, she did kill Xenagos in the storyline.
I did not know.
Yeah, Xenagos was a planeswalker, and then Elspeth screwed up and made him into a god, or somehow started a chain of events which led to him being a god. So I'm messing this up, by the way. I think she atones for this by traveling to Nyx, the land of the gods, and slaying Xenagos to return Theros.
Gotcha.
Back to order. But then Heliod kills her, which is why Elspeth's dead in the storyline right now. Because she had to consort with Erebos to make it to the underworld, and Heliod wasn't a fan. I know, right?
Yeah, it's pretty involved. So there's no real way for Chihoi to protect Elspeth here if William is willing to basically give up his turn of attacks, taking it off the field.
Yeah, so if he swings the team at Elspeth, you're right, Yim cannot defend the Elspeth. And I think that's what Cruse wants to do. I think he actually, okay, he's going to use Domri to remove a blocker.
I think the thing is he doesn't want to give up his entire attack. If there's some way for him to take care of Elspeth without, for example, giving up the worm attack, I think William would be thrilled to be able to do that.
Well, he should be able to do it if he swings these 3 satyrs. And it means he'd have to swing a lot. He'd have to swing, right?
Well, 3 satyrs plus the Mutavault plus the elves does get rid of it.
Right.
Because there's only 2 chump blocks, and the minimum is 5 damage.
There's some danger here, because if he does that, then Yim will just take all of it. Elspeth takes it all. And then he actually gets to attack with these 2 1/1s and his Mutavault back, and by combat gets to take Domri off the board, which is not great for Cruse.
Well, there's only the 2 tokens, and if she always willing to commit the Mutavault, I think William's not that upset with that. That means he's not playing something else particularly powerful to follow up on the turn.
So having a Domri is a fair trade for Yim not casting something big?
And being able to untap and attack with your 3 satyrs and all your other stuff again.
Right.
Because it commits Chioi's 2 soldier blockers as well.
Right, it commits his soldier blockers, and then if Yim did have a Supreme Verdict, he'd be verdicting away his own Mutavault.
Yeah, I mean, he could attack with a Mutavault and 1 token and leave something back, but these all seem like good exchanges for William.
All right, we'll see what our attacks are here. The team is swinging in. Where they're going, we'll find out in a second. It is 3 Satyr tokens, a Mutavault, a Worm token, and an Elvish Mystic, all attacking. Is it possible these are all just going at Yim? Yeah, and that is where they're going. So he's going to chump both the creatures, and he takes 10 and goes to 2. A Supreme Verdict should just do it, though, right? Oh, maybe not.
I mean, what happens if William's last card is, say, Advent?
Yeah, okay. Things are tough for Yim, but he's got a chance. So see, ready's 4 mana. Looks like it's going to be Supreme Verdict. So we'll see if it does it. And this is a scenario Yim was setting up for. Verdict, make some soldiers.
Yep.
Say go. Leave Mutavault up. And I don't know. This was one of the dangers of letting Yim untap with Elspeth.
Yeah, in this spot it seems like there's a much more compelling argument, to me at least, to go after the Elspeth than there was in the first game.
Well, if you get rid of Elspeth, then even if Yim has the perfect cards, you're not in a bad spot.
Although knocking Chihoe to 2, I mean, there's some draws here now. Perforos, for example.
Yeah, there's some great draws he could have. Perforos is one of them. He plays Courser, plays a Temple for the turn, so he's going to get to look at the top card, choose to scry it. It's Plains, clearly doesn't want that one. Top card is now a replacement, Xenagos. He can make a Satyr this turn and start attacking. You know, he can keep the number of soldiers down if he wants to. See right there, Xenagos makes a Satyr. He can plus Domri, but the top card is not a creature, so he won't draw off it.
And this feels like it's a possible repeat of what we saw in game 1, where Chihoe is getting rocked for most of the game, but William's deck is not especially good at dealing the last couple of points of damage, and Elspeth is all sorts of trouble.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the advantages to having more Elspeths in your control list. I know we've seen with decks like Yvonne Phlox moving away from Elspeth, moving away from any card really that can win the game.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the kind of board where it's advantageous to have Elspeth. When you just can't remove all your opponent's things, so you need to overpower them. Cruse offers a trade. He trades away the Satyr for 2 soldier tokens. And we'll see if he has a post-combat play. His next draw is going to be Xenagos. That's not going to be any help. And if you look at Yim's hand, if Yim untaps here, I'm going to go out and say that I think he gets it. He has Detention Sphere and Negate in his hand. He can Sphere the Domri, and then I don't think he has much to fear on this board.
Yeah. And not the ideal follow-up here for William.
A Centaur Healer. Because Elspeth has the Xenagos covered. Elspeth makes soldiers more efficiently than Xenagos makes Satyrs. It's 3 power to 2.
Yeah.
So the Satyr every turn won't be a problem. The Domri, the Detention Sphere takes care of a possible Domri emblem, and the Negate takes care of whatever William's piece of disruption is. It seems like Yim has all the bases covered right now.
It's about getting himself from randomly punked out here, and the 2 cards, to me, that seem most likely to be able to pull it off are either Perforos or Advent of the Worm.
If you were Yim, how upset would you be if Cruse had shocked you last turn, like with the card Shock?
I would have been pretty disappointed. Also, I guess in this spot, Sign of V2 Ghazi is not really that bad, because making 2 power worth of flyers is not shabby.
Yeah, that actually does force a counter spell. So we'll see Yim with 4 mana. It's going to be another Supreme Verdict. And he's going to go ahead and take down shields right now. No Negate, but he's going to Detention Sphere. And I like this a lot. He's going to Detention Sphere the Domri. Because of Cruse's Courser of Krufix. He knows that Cruse's next draw is another Xenagos, so he actually takes down his counterspell mana for a turn because he knows he has little to fear.
Yeah, although this does put him in a bind here where he has to lose all of his soldiers this turn and chump.
Right, so you see Xenagos, replacement Xenagos, make a Satyr, activate Mutavault, swing, and all three of the guys have to chump.
Yeah. Now, if Chiho has some follow-up here to stabilize, then I think he's got it locked up. But right now, he is basically treading water.
Yeah, because of the pacing of that turn, Yim's soldiers are not yet keeping down the Satyr tokens.
I mean, he does have a Mutavault, and that can trade off with the Mutavault at least.
I believe Yim has a Last Breath in his hand, which puts the race back on his side. So Last Breath and Negate in Yim's hand would suggest that he has things covered. When Cruse swings this turn, he can trade Mutavaults. He can Last Breath a Satyr, chump a Satyr, trade with a Satyr. Take 0. I believe that's what we'll see happen.
Shihoya also has a Revelation in his hand, and there's some argument for just rev and chump and try to overpower the following turn.
What I like about this line is he gets to keep up negates the entire time. Granted, if Cruse has something like Scion of Vitu-Ghazi, he would have wished he'd have revved.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much there is in Williams' deck that's negatable that he really cares about at this point.
I mean, I would think, I guess, not being super familiar with the Naya Tokens deck, the cards I'd want to be negating would be a card like Destructive Revelry or Guruk Caller of Beasts. These are things that could exist that I
Destructive Revelry is a good point. That's a card that could very easily be in Williams' list. And
yeah, Chiho's inconveniently for him, he's at 2. So that would be lethal. And Yim's going to be a little disappointed that he had to Last Breath his opponent's creature there. I think ideally he'd do it to one of his own.
But now he is in the good spot, right? He gets to untap, make 3 tokens. He gets to chump and put 2 in front of 1. And now he's at parity with the way that race shakes out.
He's going to Revelation for 1 here. So that he took himself down to Destructive Revelry for a turn there. But now he is safe from it, draws 2 lands. Elspeth's going to plus. And with Negate up and a second Rev in hand, question will be whether or not he even casts it yet. And if I'm Cruse, I put Yim almost 100% on having a second Rev in hand.
That would have been a really, really curious revelation.
Really aggressive revelation for 1 if you didn't have more. Tokens do some trading. And right now they're on parity with each other. Elvish Mystic is the play for Cruse. And Rev for 4 from Yim. He's up to 7, gives himself some extra breathing room. What does he hit? It's Jace, Mutavault, and I believe a land.
And you can see the speed, kind of the body language. Shihoya knows that he's turning the corner here.
Oh,
that
yeah.
Williams running out of time, running out of relevant draws.
Jace pluses, Elspeth pluses. And now he just has to sit here. He doesn't even have to draw more cards. He just needs to stay alive until he gets enough power in play that an Elspeth emblem kills Cruse.
He's also in the uncommon position of being able to just, if he wants to, he can make an emblem next turn and say attack with 2 tokens and plus Jace again. He can start the damage race real soon if he wants to. He doesn't have to wait that much longer.
Another Satyr for Cruse. He can't swing these Satyrs to trade them with the soldiers anymore. They're 1/2s on the swing thanks to the Jace Architect of Thought. Which means they would lose, just straight up lose a fight to a Mutavault and to a pair of soldiers. And nothing else here. Cruse is going to pass back to Yim. Yim draws another land. He still has that negate in hand that he's had for the last 6 or so turns. He's never actually needed to use it. And he's going to go drawing some cards. We see Last Breath and 2 lands. And that Last Breath puts Yim up to a virtual 11. Things are getting...
Yeah, I like it.
All right,
I like the early emblem.
Makes the emblem here.
I mean, he still has the board covered, and that Last Breath is even additional insurance.
No, he can't Last Breath his own guy anymore.
This is true.
He made an emblem.
He does lose this, but in terms of covering Williams' attacks, he's got that nice and sewn up.
One soldier swings across, takes care of the Xenagos. He plays another Jace. This one pluses, plays land for the turn and passes. Actually, so because he made, I'm gonna throw something back here. He has opened himself up to Stormbreath Dragon with that line.
Okay.
Cruse doesn't have one in his list, and so with that, it's a 2-0 win for Chi Yim.
Well, he still has a Mutavault up that can block.
Oh, he has flying.
Yeah,
Oh,
he's got it all. He's got it all covered. He's got it all.
If it monsters, if it lives and gets to monstrous,
But then Chioi can untap and maybe do something about it if he wants to.
Probably he has a way to take care of it.
But in any event, Chioi Yim now 11-2 alongside Tom Ross, who also won this round. And I think that those two players, if they're not in a position to draw in just yet, they are awfully close.
Well, Chi Yim at 12-2, you're right. Yeah, is very close to drawing in. William Cruse, remember, he was in first place at 11-1-1, not at 11-2 like Yim. So despite the fact that he drops to 12-2-1, he needs a win in one of his remaining 2 rounds to make top 8.
Yeah, it's a lot. These tournaments are really long. It's 16 rounds, and if you're in Williams 2 right now, I've done nothing but win the whole tournament, and it's still not even sewn up just yet.
Cruse got to enter this round needing just one more win with 3 rounds to go. Would not be surprised to see both of these players in the top 8.
Yeah.